Uh, so, welcome to the show, Supriya Puri. Thank you so much for joining us. Uh,
My pleasure.
my name is Aakshat Sinha, and I'm your host for the evening. And with Mind at Ease, with this awareness series, which is about opening up, this is the session number 17. And I hope you've been following our sessions prior to this also. It's basically a mental health initiative where we get mental health specialists to speak to you about topics which are relevant, things which are relevant to us, and making things easier and putting your mind at ease. That's the objective. And today we have with us counseling psychologist Supriya Puri. Like I said, welcome to the session, Supriya. Thank you for joining us. So I'll just take a short minute to kind of advise people as to who Supriya is and how to understand what she does. So Supriya is, my apologies, my doorbell just rang and my dog's barking because of that. So just pardon me for that in case it's audible there. Supriya, as I mentioned, is a counseling psychologist. Has a specialization in the clinical field. She's a certified arts therapist, along with being a creative movement facilitator. She's also registered as a play practitioner with the Play Therapy Association of India, as well as being professional member of the Indian Association of Dance Movement Therapy. So today's session, Supriya, is about self-regulation through body movement. And before we get into anything else, I would really want to know what does it mean, body movement as a part of, I think it's a part of the dance movement therapy as a whole. What does body movement really mean?
Right. Thank you for the question, Akshay. There are multiple ways of approaching that. And I think first, the couple of pieces in this, which is first the body and the other thing is mind, because we're talking about psychotherapy and we're talking about dance and movement along with it. Right. So I'm just going to build the foundation by telling a little bit about how this comes about to be. And the start point is when we're born. So all of us are born as embodied beings, right? So we are experiencing the environment in a real way that everything in the environment, every individual in the environment is being perceived and made sense through the body. Right. And that happens till about 3 years of age. And that is when our mind and our embodied cognition, that's higher order processing, that comes online.
Okay.
So till about 3 years, all that we're perceiving, good or bad, is only from the language of the body.
Right.
It doesn't have meaning and perception involved. Right. So as we grow, the mind comes along online with the body. And what happens as we grow up, due to multiple attributions, it could be through Western civilization, it could be through breakdown of certain structures of socialization, it could be through because of capitalism. But what happens is that the spectrum and the continuum of the mind and the body gets split.
Okay.
So now we're looking at mind and body and not mind-body.
Right.
It's not directional. Yeah, they're two separate entities, right? So what happens when the consciousness is split off from the sensation is that some parts of our consciousness and our existence become fragmented. Right. So certain parts of our emotions, certain parts of our consciousness become uncontained and unresolved. Right. Because now the mind has taken over and the body plays second fiddle.
Okay.
So that is where the advent of a need arose, that we needed to bring the mind body again as a continuum rather than seeing them as separate entities.
Okay.
So a larger field called body psychotherapies came about to be in the past century more so. And within that is the discipline of dance movement therapy and somatic psychotherapies. And soma is a Greek word which means experiencing the body from within.
Okay.
Right. So now when we start experiencing the body, we are able to see differences in regulation and the capacity to have well-being and aliveness
Right.
in multiple layers of experience, which are physiological, which are psychological, which are social, and which are spiritual.
Right.
So it is all about creating a continuum and bringing both these levels of consciousness together. And what movement does, or what any kind of somatic practice does, it helps us to bring that in alignment and integration.
So it's a conscious
Right?
connection between mind and body and bringing them together, as you mentioned. Uh,
Yeah.
so I would like to understand. So through this body movement, and who actually benefits? I mean, who are the kind of people, or is it everybody who benefits? How does it go about?
Right. Well, I'm a firm believer in, holistic, the ability for every person to heal.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that it's a prerogative of every single individual who's embodied to take the benefit of what is available in terms of psychotherapy or body psychotherapy.
Right.
But just to create a spectrum out of that, I would say that people who want to engage both their sensation and consciousness and thread those together to have a coherent narrative.
Right.
People who are experiencing difficulty in changing any one part of their life, be it emotion, be it relation, be it something with the body, having emotional expression which they're able to manage and understand. People who are experiencing chronic conditions as well, and and you may have heard of this word called psychosomatic
Right.
conditions.
Yeah.
But what generally is that the psyche or the consciousness and the thought and the perception is creating somatic conditions.
Okay. So kind of the mind
So
starts impacting the body's from the inside.
from the inside, yeah, that's absolutely right. And apart from that, people who just want to experience greater vitality and choice, because
Mm-hmm.
when you have the body also online, you have 80% of afferent information coming in, along with the
Right.
20%, which is the mind.
Right.
So it gives you a locus of control, which is internalized rather than externalized.
So it's like
And that
making
allows,
your, I'm sorry, it's like making your, I mean, being aware of your body by using your mind itself. Is it something?
yeah, yeah. So we are bringing conscious awareness to the processes of the body
Right.
rather than it playing in implicit ways in our thoughts, actions, behaviors.
Right.
And when the conscious awareness is there, you have greater control and greater choice, a response flexibility that we call in our field, that comes with having both these in alignment.
Right. And so what all would this entail? I mean, body movement, what all does it include within itself? Within,
Right. So one is the framework of what body psychotherapy is. So let's look at it this like a continuum, and
mm-hmm.
one in the continuum, which is the sensation, and
Mm-hmm.
let's assign body to it, or the soma,
Right.
and the other is consciousness or the thought.
Right.
So when we start from the spectrum, this end of the spectrum, which is the sensation, we look at sensory perception. So how do sensation really feel from within?
Right.
Being able to practice the awareness of looking at the sensation and feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we go a step ahead, we come to body awareness. We come to body imagery and visualization. We come to touch. We come to metaphors,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. To the other end of the spectrum, we have movement, dance, mindfulness, metacognition, creating coherent narratives, and then absolute mindfulness and consciousness.
Right. So there are
Right. So
different
this is
layers, as in, as a person can grow in their awareness of their body and the sensations within, build them this connecting to connection together, right? I mean, this.
right. So the I think the basic principle of any psychotherapy, not only somatic, is meeting a person where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if they're experiencing being stuck or something that is not get resolved at the level of the consciousness, that
Right.
is where we start work. And then there's a very gradual journey towards the sensation continuum of it.
Mm-hmm. So,
If the person is on the other end
yeah.
of the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
we bring coherence to the other side.
So can we demonstrate, I mean, something? I mean, can we, I mean, as to how this is done or something you have in your mind?
Yeah, for sure. I think self-regulation is something that we can understand a little bit before we go into that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to invite you to give me your sense of what do you think regulation means for you?
So regulation is some sort of a understood regime that you follow. I don't know. I mean, that's how I would want to put it.
Right. And it's definitely something that you're aware of
Right.
that brings that understanding. But regulation means that if you imagine that that life is a wave, right?
Right.
And high tides and the low tides.
Right.
So it is the ability to not remain in either the low tide or the high tide, but to come to a level of equilibrium and homeostasis.
So as a
So I'm
continuum or
able
to flow through them.
to flow through them. Life is constantly flowing.
Right.
But if, for example, I have a very heightened sense of emotion
Mm-hmm.
and affect, as we call it, I'm able to bring certain processes online through the body or through my consciousness to
Mm-hmm.
come to a level which is stable to me,
Right.
where I can choose my response,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is what regulation somewhat looks like. And some people in the field, specifically in the neurobiology or neurophysiology field, sometimes argue that self-regulation is a myth,
Okay.
because self-regulation comes about to be in continuum with a person or an
Mm-hmm.
individual.
Right.
And we can just our examples on board, where we're talking to a friend when we're really upset. If they're in a state of regulation,
Mm-hmm.
our body and our nervous system borrows from that
Okay.
and comes to a state of regulation. So that means that we are co-regulating. We're
Mm-hmm.
doing this in tandem,
Right.
right? But what I like to add over here is the beauty of the neuroplasticity of our brain and our bodies,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically that we can rewire our experiences even though we may not have self-regulation online since childhood. We can bring it to our awareness in this time, in this moment.
So it can be rewired, is what you're saying.
It can be rewired, yeah, at any point in your life. It's irrespective of age.
I think in response to self-regulation, Preeti just mentioned, I think it's in the comments where she has mentioned that it's a set of strict guidelines.
It could be. And probably I leave it open for people also to understand what is self-regulation for them,
Right,
right? We're leaving room for what feels regulating to us.
right.
But generally it is an internal process
Mm-hmm.
that we first experience from the environment, and then it comes from within,
Right. So we have
right? So
mentioning that is it spiritual connected to doing body movements, something like Osho? Do you want to respond to that? Later? I mean, how would you want to take this?
we can definitely take it later, but you can experience, since it's a spectrum, you
Mm-hmm.
can experience higher consciousness through the body for sure.
Right, right,
Uh, through when we say that we are not aware of what is happening around, we are not saying that we are disembodied, that we don't
right.
are not aware of our body, but we're in a higher state of consciousness. The only aspect here that I like to add from a
Mm-hmm.
clinical perspective
Right.
is when our emotions
Mm-hmm.
and when our physiology makes us feel uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
there is a response which is naturally available to us, which is called dissociation,
Okay.
which seems very similar to what happens when we are in spiritual states, right? So I think bringing that to bear and knowing that you are embodied spiritually, meaning you're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing spirituality in your body
Right,
rather than out of body, is
Right.
extremely important to consider here.
Right. Right. So great. Like I asked you, would you want to kind of share as to what are the kind of the movements or how, when you also spoke about chronic issues that exist in the body, that they can be
Yeah.
addressed through this. What are these? I mean, so what kind of chronic issues are you talking about? Chronic pains or aches or those kind of things, or chronic diseases? What are you talking about?
Yeah, when we're talking about the whole spectrum of chronic illnesses, we're talking about autoimmune disease, we're
Okay.
talking about chronic fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is not even in the vocabulary of consciousness right now in terms
Right.
of medical,
Mm-hmm.
but the medical world, but that is called adrenal fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and all of these conditions exacerbate because of toxicity in the body and inflammation and stress,
Right.
which is experienced within,
Right.
right? We experience it from within. And
That's
at that point of time, creating an avenue where we can experience the body in very incremental values. I think that is extremely important to understand, even for our conversation,
mm-hmm.
that although we're talking about chronic pain and conditions, we have to look at the specificity of the
Mm-hmm.
individual.
Right.
And what that would mean is that your context and my
Mm-hmm.
context is extremely different, and our context affects our body and our mind.
Right.
So I may be looking at chronic conditions, but I have to also take into account what happened in my environment,
Mm-hmm.
that my body became permeable and imbibed and internalized that stress,
Right.
right? So that's why while I'm talking to you, I'm also aware that when we do this exercise, which and go through this process, I would invite people to bring consciousness and discernment that if any aspect of
Mm-hmm.
this feels overwhelming,
Right.
pause and
Right.
really have compassion for your experience,
Right.
because we may or may not have another person or a mental health professional online immediately. So
Right.
take it very.
So this should be done under guidance or with some kind of a help in front of you. I mean, with that support to
It
overcome any
it
overwhelming
usually
situation.
it helps. It definitely helps.
Right.
It in fact, even a pet. If
Mm-hmm.
you have a pet, that really helps. If you have nature around you,
Right.
that really helps. But when we're talking about chronic
Mm-hmm.
dysregulation
Right.
and stress over a period of time, sometimes even those aspects don't work.
Right.
And we were talking about co-regulation before, earlier in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. We need someone who can co-regulate their
Mm-hmm.
system, which
Right.
is in a state of ease, with
Mm-hmm.
our system. That's why practicing it with an individual is definitely highly recommended than doing it in isolation if you know that you've had history.
Right. But so how do you feel about this online fact that, the physical, so I'm assuming that your individual sessions would have been in a physical format, right? Face-to-face
Yeah,
interaction. So how
yeah.
has this, I know this is a slight digression from what we're discussing, but this online
Right.
interaction, has that, uh, so you need to cope with that yourself and to, to a point where it is easy to use the people whom you are doing this act with.
Right. I've thought about that question, Akshat, and what came to me
Right,
was that the factor of change in any relationship or any
mhm,
condition is actually the fulcrum is the relationship, the
right,
therapeutic
right,
relationship between my clients and myself or
right,
anybody who's doing this work, and the ease with which they are able to flow into this kind of medium rather than being
mhm,
present to the bodily cues is also dependent on how long and how much we've been able to internalize each other's sense of regulation and cues,
right,
right? So it's like saying that if I know an individual or a person for a year, I
mhm,
know their tics,
right.
I know how
So the
they move.
association, the length or the duration of the association also helps in this.
Oh, for sure. The length and the quality.
Right, yeah,
The quality is much more important than the length. I mean, we can have extreme variability in length, but
Right.
if the quality is intact, you
Mm-hmm.
can do amazing work. And
Right.
that is the fulcrum of.
Right.
So following from that, I have realized that if the quality of the relationship is really strong, it's
Mm-hmm.
easier to flow into this format
Right. Right.
because I already know what are your nonverbal cues. I
Right.
already know you say something, what is the tonality of your voice? What
Right.
do you mean by it? How do you
Mm-hmm.
hold space? But for an individual who's probably coming online for the first time, in the sense they're
Right.
seeking sessions for the first time, is extremely taxing on our system. And we're talking about stress and stress
Right.
physiology. It becomes overwhelming because I have to take account of every single thing that is happening in this
Right.
limited queue, like this
Right.
box.
Box.
Right? I have to look at your non-verbals. I have to look at how you move. I have to
Mm-hmm.
look at the essence of your words, the way you breathe, and take all of that into account, which is taxing for both the therapist and, of
Yeah.
course, for the client because missing that sense of connection that is implicit in that relationship.
Like you mentioned about the
So,
co-regulation, so your balance is also to be at a heightened, I mean, it has to be at that balance equilibrium spot. And while you're searching for
for
cues from the person, it can, I mean, so you're also focused on things more than what you should be. I mean, what you can.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and any lag, and what happens when the relationship isn't very strong, any lag, for example, a technical issue, or you're not able to hear each other, would
Right.
put your body in stress.
Right.
That I'm not able to connect with you, I'm not able to see you,
Right.
and that adds to that roller coaster ride we were talking about. The
Right.
wave goes up and it's not able to come down,
Right.
and you have to deal with those challenges and keep the other really imperative aspects to the side to
Right.
first ease the physiology out.
Right. Right. So, like I was asking you about, are we planning to do any kind of practical part too?
Sure, sure, for sure. So we're going to do this in two sets. The first is called the grounding, centering, and orienting bit.
Mhm.
And for that, if anybody chooses to do it along, again, practice discernment. But what I invite you to do is have bare feet,
Okay.
right? If you can, because
Yeah.
the first aspect is called grounding. And what we do over here is we pay attention to the soles of our feet and how they feel in connection with the ground,
Right.
like looking at feeling the texture of the ground, and if you're able to sense any energy that comes along,
So,
right?
yeah, just 1 second. So, Preeti is suggesting that we switch off the comments for the time being so that you are visible completely. And we'll switch on the comments once we are done with the practical session. We'll again switch on the comments and people can then give in their comments. And in case they have any questions, they can share that as well. Will you be fine with that? Can I switch off the comments for the time
Sure,
being? Yeah.
sure, sure.
So, I've done that. Please.
Right. So yeah, starting from the ground, allow yourself to feel the energy of the earth. And if you can bring both your hands to below your navel, 2 inches below your navel, just place your hands there and sense the energy that you may be receiving from the earth, letting it fill you up from your feet up to your thighs and coming to your lower pelvis. And also, you can either do this with open eyes or closed eyes. It's completely up to you. But if you're doing it with open, I would request you to lower your gaze from the level of the device that you're watching this on, right? And bringing awareness to your jaw and just sensing if it's clenched. If you can release your jaw and let your tongue melt to the floor of your jaw. Release any tension in that you may be holding in your mouth. Right? And just sense what is coming up. Notice the breath without changing it. Notice what you're experiencing in this moment. And now you can gently bring your hands to your sides. You can place them on your thighs. And what we're going to do is we're going to allow our eyes to scan the room. So you can open your eyes, and almost as if the objects are inviting you to be seen. Like you're remembering the detail on those objects, taking your time and receiving them through your vision. Whatever catches your fancy in this moment, really take an interest in what is around you and the environment that is holding you in this moment. You can also notice your breath in this moment. Has it shifted, changed, or remains the same? And you can cover one quadrant of the room, the ceiling, and gently go to the next. And really explore it with the spirit of exploration of what is around you in this moment. Keeping the connection with the earth strong. Looking at the colors, the textures that your eyes are witnessing. And then gently lower your gaze and bringing to the level that you started from. And just noticing what you experienced right now in this moment. If any part of this experience felt overwhelming, take a long, deep breath and release it. But I would encourage you, if you can, to stay with the experience, right? And if people have been able to orient to this moment, we're going to move on to the next set of exercises. And we're going to call these centering and containment. And for this, we're going to use our own body to bring a sense of ease to ourselves. So the first place we're going to start is our head. So if I can invite people to bring both of their hands to the sides of the head. And just feel the texture of your hair, the quality of your grip. And I often like to add an affirmation. If you would choose, you can put your own. And for me, it is, I am creating a container for my thoughts. Just get the sense of what you experience when you say that. I'm creating a container for my thoughts. Noticing your breath, sensation. And then we move on to our forehead and to the back of our head. Really feeling the center of our consciousness that is allowing us to think and see and make sense of experience. And adding any thought that comes to you for your mind that is contained between your hands in this moment. And noticing how your body responds to that. Taking the hand at the back of our head to our neck. shifting position to the neck. And now, in essence, we're connecting with our breath and the space where our breath is regulated, while also bringing our consciousness online. Whatever you choose to communicate, whatever comes for you in this moment, adding an intention to this holding and noticing how your body feels. You can thank it, you can acknowledge it. And now we move on and we create a bird with our hands. We can do so. And we bring this to our collarbone and to the sides of our collarbone. And we gently start tapping from left, right, left, right. And it can be as gentle or as thorough as you need in this moment. You can add an intention to it. What comes to me is that I'm at ease, I'm taken care of, and I'm safe. I'm at ease, I'm taken care of, and I'm safe. And you can lower your eyes and allow yourself to really feel this. How does it feel to you to experience these taps on your body? Noticing your sensation, your breath. And finally, we can bring any hand to the other side of our body, place it beneath, and with the other hand, we bring it to our shoulder and really hold ourselves. Feel the musculature of your body. Feel the sense of containment within your arms. If you feel comfortable, you can add a gentle motion, back and forth rocking to it. Sense how that changes the sensation and the feeling. If any intention comes to you for yourself in this moment while you do this, go ahead, say it out loud or within, whatever feels comfortable. And whenever you feel this containment is complete, you can bring your hands down. You can place them on your solar plexus, that is 2 inches above your navel. And you can place another hand 2 inches below. And just sense how that pressure feels. Is it different? Is it comforting? What is the sense you get of it? While we keep our ground, let us be aware of what the sensation is. If you can, notice it. Stay with it for as long as you want. If it feels comfortable. Gently bring your hands to your sides again, looking within for what is coming up for you, looking at the ground and the feet, and taking a deep breath in and releasing it. If with the sound, if a hum comes to you, you can do that. If any vowel comes to you, you can release it with that. And yeah, that's it. So that's our set of exercises.
So first of all, I'll switch on the comments.
Right.
So so yeah, wherein now we open to people sharing. Is what I mean, what would you like? I mean, how does it go in the session? How do you go about it?
So usually, for example, if you were doing it, how did you feel? What was your sense of it? From the beginning to the end, was there anything that changed, shifted? How do you feel in this moment? And without changing your experience, I think it's important to say that we notice our experience, not change our experience. So, what came up for you while you were noticing your experience? And I'll be happy for people to share as well.
So till people start typing, I can probably share my end. So truth be told, so while we were still scanning, till about the time when we were still scanning the room and all, I don't think there was much happening. I was just doing it, and I did notice my breath to some extent and how it was. It was quite shallow to start off with. That's something, and that kind of changed, the progression of the session with the activity. But the moment you asked me to put my hand, when I put my hands, one hand to the front of the head and the other to the back, for some reason I don't know why I sense rapids, the stones and the water kind of, that I don't know, this sort of a turbulence that I felt of the water.
Yeah.
And when you asked me to kind of move it down, the turbulence was still there, but I mean, the moment I pushed my back hand to my neck, to the back of my neck, uh, it was just suddenly silent. The waterfall had already fallen to the pool below, and it was just silence sorts. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but I think that was something that I kind of sensed, and that sense of peace kind of progressed with the as I went further, and I could notice that my breath also became more deeper, deeper. That's what I experienced from it.
Right. Thank you for sharing. Uh, and this is, of course, because when I invited people, I knew because when we're doing something for the first time, we're really slowing our consciousness.
Right,
All the things that we have not processed kind of come up in the body.
right,
So they will come up as the metaphor that you came up with was the rapids
yeah,
and the water which might be raging, and for other people it would be different. It's important to know where you're at. It's
true.
completely fine, and this is a very, very normal response. And if at that moment, for example, we had stopped, I would have invited you to go back to grounding.
Hmm. Right,
Just ground yourself in that moment, and that would have been the end of the exercise, because our we have to listen to our physiology and we have to listen to our body,
right,
and it always gives us signs like you just experienced.
right.
And I like to introduce a term to you which is called the felt sense experience, which is the internal sense of what the body feels.
Okay. What's it called again?
It
Felt?
felt sense,
Okay.
Felt, felt sense experience.
Right,
So your felt sense experience is extremely important when you're doing the body work, and acknowledging, noticing it without changing it is really essential, because we're essentially increasing the capacity of the body to
right,
hold those sensations, and that happens incrementally in a very gentle fashion. This
right,
is just the starting of that, but it allows containment.
right. So Preeti has responded. She's saying, felt a sense of calm and your voice is so soothing.
Right. I'm glad, Preeti, you feel a sense of calm.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
For anybody who's feeling distressed, I think just acknowledge that as well.
right,
If you're feeling stressed out, you can either sit on the ground, lie on the floor, or just be bare feet,
right,
right? And, and that would also allow a sense of settling to happen for what the body experiences right now.
right. So, while people still think, I don't know, I mean, I'm hopeful that they will share. But maybe if you could help me understand how does the self-regulation part, this, kind of through this body movement or through what we did right now, how is this addressed or how is this approached? Uh,
Right. So when we are talking about self-regulation, that the word self,
mhm.
is extremely important.
Right,
When we do not have an internalized sense of regulation, meaning that we are able to do this from within,
right,
we we bring in adjunct practices such as bringing our own body's regulation through
mhm.
consciousness of our hands, through our orientation, to allow a sense of integration to come along,
Right,
right? So what I mean by that is that if we cannot have an individual, even a
mhm.
psychotherapist or a mental health professional,
Right,
who is not on board, and also we don't have caretakers or anybody who can create that sense of safety for us,
right.
we can still heal by generating a sense of holding for ourselves through these self-regulation practices,
It's kind of creating a
right?
container around yourself, a safety net, sort of.
Safety, and you said the word safety is the first, is a starting point of trying to really get into the body, because for a lot of us the body is not a safe space to be in.
Right.
So this, and saying the intention
Mm-hmm.
along with what you do, it allows you to change your relationship with your body, at
Right.
least to some level.
Yeah.
And we know that when we change our perception,
Mm-hmm.
we can change our sensation and how we feel, right?
Right.
So in essence, through these practices, we are rewiring our ability to create containers for ourselves.
So as you mentioned about the chronic part in our body, the accumulation of those that stress over a period of time. So that does get,
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know, I mean, through sessions and through doing it, repeatedly, incrementally, you can kind of reduce uh, the stress level
Yeah.
at those points.
Yes. So this, it takes longer than a talk therapy session. So
Okay.
I feel that there's no divide in between that. You need verbal and cognition aspects to come online for us to
Right.
make sense of our experience. Just
Right.
like we did, we were conscious and yet we were working with the body,
Right.
right? So that aspect is essential. But
Mhm.
when we're looking at stress responses, we're ideally looking at the stress physiology, that is our autonomic nervous system.
Right.
And we have to work from bottom up, that is from the sensation aspect, which usually become really uncomfortable for us to
Mhm.
hold.
Right.
We have to create a stronger container and a capacity and regulation to hold those experiences, to then changing how we perceive that pain and how that pain is perceived by the body.
Right.
Yeah, so there are certain exercises called neurosensory exercises, which we did. This was a certain segment of it. That
Right.
there are other complementary practices that are able to work at the physiology and the nervous system level to release what it has held,
Right.
which is basically a fight, flight, freeze response
Okay.
to any distressing situation, right?
Right.
So people, are not able to do that because our cognition comes online. So when we're feeling uncomfortable, we try to repress it rather
Right.
than letting it flow. So we're saying, okay, that happens at the end of the spectrum. First, let's create small incremental changes in our
Mm-hmm.
ability to sense one uncomfortable sensation.
Right.
And when that starts transforming, we can also change the stress physiology, which leads to chronic illness, autoimmune diseases, and essentially, if you look at stress, it's at the center of all condition and diseases.
Right.
And if we're able to release that and the inflammation that comes with that, that is stored in the body,
Mm-hmm.
definitely change is possible.
Right. Right. So, I read about the fact that you are also the founder of Center for Self, right? So, could you
Yeah.
just probably just tell our listeners as to what that is and how they can connect to you through that, and could share about it?
Right. Yeah, for sure. So, Center of Self is an initiative to create safe spaces for exploration of both the body and the mind.
Right.
And um, one essential element to that is meeting a person where they're at,
Mm-hmm.
which is not subject to only a diagnosis.
Okay.
Because uh, in essence, everybody is on a very wide spectrum, which diagnosis is one end of it,
Right.
because conditions exacerbated to a level which require that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I feel that every single individual is experiencing some form of distress where they should be able to ask for help and they should be taken up,
Right.
right? With, of course, if they need other help, there are junk therapies and you do referrals, but just that space that
Mm-hmm.
I'm held and I'll be taken care of is
Right.
what Center for Self aims to do. I work through expressive arts therapy, so that
Mm-hmm.
is the whole spectrum of dance, theater, movement, games, voice,
Right.
and my specific orientation is towards amalgamation of body and somatic practices along with the mind.
Right. Great.
So that's what Center is about. You can find me on my website, and you can write to me on my email ID, and I'll be happy to
So we'll be
help you in
sharing
any
those
way.
that information with our listeners separately on our page, on our Instagram and our Facebook page. But centerforself.com is your website, right? If I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we have kind of come to to the end of our session here, because all good things
Right.
end. So right. So this is the session number 17 of Awareness series Coping Up, and today we had with ourselves Supriya Puri, a counseling psychologist, and we went through a lot of a bit of the exercise, or rather the body movement and body awareness with her. I'm sure that there is a lot more that has a lot more questions that must have risen because of this interaction. So I would request you all to send us the request for questions, or you can reach out directly to Supriya as well. Uh, this video would be on our Instagram in some time, because I think IGTV has started now. But we are compiling all our sessions on, as of now, on my own YouTube channel, which is In Conversation with Aakshat Sinha. You can always check out our Facebook page, our Instagram page for our other information and what we are really about. It's a mental health initiative was taking place, and I'm really happy that I could join her on this. And I'm thankful to all our mental health specialists, including you, Supriya, for helping us out with this and bringing this awareness to the public this time of. Thank you so much, Supriya.
Okay. Thank you so much, Akshat and Preeti, for creating this forum. Really, really grateful. And I hope many, many more people are able to benefit from this.
Right.
So, really, thank you.
Thank you so
A lot
much,
of
and
gratitude.
thanks to our listeners as well for being there. Right.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone who joined.
Bye bye.